Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Madeline and this is Made with Books. First of all, welcome to a lot of new subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel and for watching, and some of you have already commented on videos, which has been wonderful. And yeah, it's nice you're here, and I had recently been mentioned by Claudia from Spinster's Library and by Summer from Summer Dawn, and I will link their channels down below. But the really big influx of new subscribers, I have Jason to thank for from Old Blues Chapter and Verse. And Jason has recently reached 800 subscribers, which he completely deserves and even more. And he has made a video in celebration of that. And instead of, I don't know, celebrating himself, I guess, he celebrated BookTube and he shouted out 8 booktubers. So he did a video called 8 shoutouts for 800, and I will link that one down below as well, because he not only mentioned me, of course, he mentioned a lot of other wonderful channels, and to some of them I had been previously subscribed, but to others I hadn't, and I found some wonderful new channels that way, so you should go check out his video and obviously subscribe to him as well if you haven't done so already. He's a wonderful, lovely guy, and I'm not just saying that because he shouted me out, but I really think so. Yes. And yes, I just found a lot of new channels that way, and I also found some new channels who subscribe to me, and some channels you can see it when they subscribe to you. It will show that so-and-so has subscribed to your channel. And one of them was Johnny Keane, who has over 1,000 subscribers, and for some reason I had never come across his channel before, so I don't know what happened there and what YouTube algorithm prevented me from finding him before. So but I will link to his channel down below as well. And another channel that I think is absolutely wonderful, I've only seen 2 of his videos so far, but I've been so impressed, is the postmodern poetry prognosticator, and I will link to his channel with this wonderful name down below as well, and you should check him out. Has a wealth of knowledge, and particularly on poetry, so if this is something you're interested in, definitely go over there and check out his channel. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Jason, and hello to everybody who's new here. And I thought, because I reached 100 subscribers, and I've seen a lot of people do that when they reach like a tiny milestone, I guess it is, do a Q&A. So I thought that's something I could do. So if you want to ask me anything or want to know anything about me, feel free to leave questions in the comment section down below. And I don't know, depending, if I just get a few questions, I might combine it with another video and just answer those questions in that video. And I don't know, if I get more questions, I'll make a separate video out of that. So I don't know, anything you want to know about me, I guess, is just have a go at it. If you want to know what I do for work, or what I do in my free time, or I don't know, I don't know if that's something interesting even, but I guess we're chatting, and it's just nice to get to know people a little better. I always like hearing some more personal things about booktubers, just so you have a feeling and you feel like you're getting to know them a little better. And so I thought that's what I would do. So yeah, please, if you want to leave questions in the comments down below, and all of the channels I just mentioned I will link in the description box below my video, so please go check those out. And yeah, I think that's all I have as a way of introduction, and I'm gonna very not smoothly segue into a February wrap-up, because I haven't done that yet, and it's already mid-March. So I've only read 3 books in February, and I started it off with Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, and I really enjoyed this. I first saw the book on BookTube, and then I also saw the movie trailer, which looks really fun, but now that I've read the book and then watched some individual scenes that are available on YouTube, I'm not sure I want to watch it anymore, because I feel like the movie digresses quite a bit from the book. If somebody has read the book and watched the movie, let me know if you think it's a it's a good idea to watch the movie or not. But I actually really enjoyed this story. So I should probably tell you what it's about. So this is not only, but two of the main characters in this are Rachel Chu and Nicholas Young. And they are a young couple living in New York, both teaching at a university. She is an economics professor and I think he's a history professor. And he decides to take her to Singapore for the summer because that's where his family lives. Now, what he neglects to tell Rachel, however, is that his family, or the family he comes from, is very, very wealthy and not just normal rich, but as the title suggests, crazy rich. And so Rachel, kind of clueless, steps on this plane, and then as she gets to Singapore, she slowly realizes what kind of background Nick comes from. And this introduces some trouble because Nick's mother doesn't agree with the choice of girlfriend he's made because she does not come from one of these wealthy families. She has a very different background, and so trouble ensues. And this is one of the major storylines you get in this book, but another important plot line is related to one of Nick's cousins, Astrid Leung, and her husband Michael, and they are experiencing some marriage troubles. And you have all these different stories intertwining. Oh, and I should say one of the reasons they go to Singapore is to attend the wedding of Nick's best friend. And so, yeah, this is a romance novel. This is a genre I don't usually read. But I really enjoyed this story, and I think it's not just a superficial story. I thought it was fairly well taught and told. And what I thought was interesting, for example, is that on a lot of pages you have footnotes to the story. So Kevin Kwan really goes into detail with some of the aspects of Singapore and Chinese culture. He explains food dishes that are mentioned, he explains certain habits, or some stuff is written in Hokkien or Mandarin. You have the translations in the footnotes as well. And I thought that was really interesting because I didn't expect this to sort of be educational, if you will, as well. I mean, obviously this is not everyday life for like everyday Chinese people. This is describing the lives of the super rich, which is a rather particular sphere. But I thought that was kind of interesting. I will say something that can be a bit tedious in the story is the frequent mention of brands. So you get all these descriptions about the clothes that they wear, about the fashion designers, the jewelry designers, and all the aspects and ways in which you can spend money, from buying airplanes that are laid out with basically like their own, I don't know, jacuzzi or stuff like that, like these super ridiculous things, or having your own private island, things like that, to celebrate your bachelorette party. So that can get a bit tedious sometimes, and it's almost reminded me in some way of American Psycho, where you also have this constant brand name dropping. Although I should say this is not a novel about a serial killer who's also an unreliable narrator with a warped vision on reality, but rather a romance novel, as I mentioned. I also found it interesting how Juan talks about some of the conflicts that are between Singaporeans and people from mainland China, which was something I didn't know about. So apparently there's this idea among the rich Singaporeans that the rich mainland Chinese are less than them. So I thought there was sort of an interesting aspect, cultural-wise, that I didn't know about. And I like that it wasn't all romanticized, so of course you have all this glamorous over-the-top money spending, but at the same time it's made fairly obvious that that doesn't necessarily is gonna make you happy. So you have Astrid, Nick's cousin, who is this beautiful and kind woman who dresses really well, but is really understated about it, and not show-offy or anything. And she has this husband whom she very much loves, and a little son, and she's very wealthy, and she married a guy who doesn't come from a wealthy background, much like the relationship between Nick and Rachel. And it looks like her husband is having an affair, so not everything is as she would like it to be. And I'm not gonna tell you how that turns out between them, because that would be spoilery territory, and I don't know if you haven't read this book and you would like to pick it up. I don't want to spoil it for you. But I thought that was interesting. And so the first part, the very like sort of introductory pages are interesting. So you have Nick as a young child in this, and his mother and the family traveling to the UK, and they are trying to check into a hotel, and they get a concierge who obviously is racist and doesn't want to let them stay at the hotel. And what happens is that his mother calls her husband and asks him to find them another hotel that they can stay in, because the concierge is not going to let them stay at the hotel. And it ends up being the situation that her husband buys the hotel, and so they not only stay there, and the previous owner of the hotel comes because they're good friends with him, but obviously the concierge is then by her let go. And it's a nice story to show first off the wealth of the family, and already give you an idea on that they can just at the drop of a hat buy a whole hotel. And also kind of you're happy that this awful racist concierge is shown off, so you're quite happy about that. But at the same time, I mean, obviously this is not a solution to racism, because if you're not super rich, that is not going to be an option for you. So I don't know, that was probably maybe like an interesting entrance into the novel, and I enjoyed reading it, but it's obviously just for a certain kind of people that this solution could work. Yeah, I guess this was a bit rambly. I hope I could give you an idea of what I thought of this novel. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm currently reading the second part, China Rich Girlfriend, so once I'm finished I'll let you know what I think about that. I think it's safe to say though that although I'm enjoying it, I'm not as enjoying it as much as the first part so far. But yeah, this was Crazy Rich Asians. And then the second book I read in February was quite different, and it was When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. And this has made the rounds on BookTube a while ago, and it's the story of Paul Kalanithi, who worked to become a neuroscientist and a neurosurgeon, and he worked very, very hard, and he had his wife, and they were starting to think about starting a family, and he's at the age of, I think, 36, and he's just about to reach all his goals, have this wonderful career ahead of him for which he worked so hard, and he gets diagnosed with cancer, and everything changes, and he dies in the end. And before he dies, he starts writing down his experiences, and he writes about the time before his diagnosis, and he writes about the time after his diagnosis, so the book's kind of split in that way as well. And it's difficult to talk about a memoir, especially if the person that wrote it is dead. And it's a tricky thing to judge. I wouldn't want to judge this book, but some things that I found interesting is he talks about how he wants to be a good doctor, and you really admire the view he takes. So it's not just for him about medical perfection, especially as a neurosurgeon, you're gonna have to be perfect. He talks about how, you know, you cut like a millimeter to the wrong side and the person that you have operated on is no longer going to be able to talk, or something like that. So how easily something like that can happen. So obviously this medical perfection is very important, but at the same time he also wants to consider that his patients are humans who are scared, and he wants to be a good doctor in the sense that he helps them along the journey that they have to take because of the diseases that they get diagnosed with. And so he's very empathetic in that way, but then his perspective still changes a lot when he goes from being a doctor himself to becoming a patient. He talks before about, when he talks about his perspective as being a doctor, he talks about doctors that tell their patients, oh, you're going to have 6 months to live, or you're going to have 2 years to live. And he says how dangerous it is to make such a promise, or or maybe not a promise, but even something like a negative statement. You only have so and so many months or weeks or whatever to live. Because he says you can't really be sure. You have statistics you can fall on, but they're not foolproof, and you may tell somebody they only have 6 months to live and they go on to live a couple more years, or you're going to tell somebody they have years to live and they're going to die within one. And so he doesn't want to make these kind of statements, but then he gets to the side where he's the patient, and the doctor that he's working with, he's asking her for his survival chances and percentage wise and things like that. And she doesn't want to give any of these kind of informations to him, and he gets really antsy about that, and really he wants this information, he needs this information. And so it's just interesting how his perspective shifts. You also get a lot of literary input in this, because he also studied literature. He was very well read, and so he draws from that. So that is also something that was very interesting. He also more or less openly talks about difficulties that he had in his marriage with his wife, because obviously working as hard as he did to become a neurosurgeon, to become a neuroscientist at the same time, he worked crazy hours, and then his wife also worked in medicine, also worked crazy hours, so they didn't get to spend as much time together, and how they almost were like growing apart. And in a way, I guess the disease somewhat brought them back together, and they decided to have a child after his diagnosis, which I thought was interesting. And it's nice that he talks so openly about that, because that is, I guess, sort of kind of a taboo topic. You don't talk about problems in your relationship openly, but he does. But at the same time, sometimes, I mean, this is a slim book, you want more information, but then at the same time, are you allowed to be privy to all these private experiences, or is that just you as a reader being nosy? And obviously he chose what he wanted to share, and you also have to wonder, did he not have time to write more? You know, it leaves off at a certain point, and it leaves off at a touching point, but you wonder, did he finish what he wanted to write, or did he want to write more? And it ends along the lines about his love for his daughter, so that was something beautiful to see, that he got to spend some time with his daughter before he passed away. But I think when he passed away, she was 8 months old, so it's just very tragic. And it's just interesting to think that at some point she's going to be old enough to have this book to read, and to what for us is just an account of a person we never met, that is touching, obviously, and that is a very unique perspective, but that for somebody is going to be so much more personal than that. It's just an interesting idea. I guess I would recommend it if you don't mind reading something that's rather heartbreaking. So yeah, this is the second book I read in the month of February. And then the last book I read in the month of February is another big jump, or just a very different title, and that was Snuff by Chuck Palahniuk. And I've previously only read Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk, and I've read that, I think, 10 years ago or something like that, but I really enjoyed it back then. And then I started to read his short story collection, Haunted, and the stories were really good, but some of the stories were super intense, just with what happened in them, very graphic, and I had to put down Chuck Palahniuk for a while. But then I just recently watched some videos by Stripped Cover Lip talking about Chuck Palahniuk, and obviously Adrian loves him very much, and I don't know, it got me interested to pick up Palahniuk again, and I went for Snuff. So this is the story of Cassie White, and Cassie White is a porn star. And at some point she's still famous, but she was like the most famous porn star of them all, I guess. And she her heydays are behind her. and she decides to have like one last big huzzah, I guess, and decides to break all the records and sleep with 600 men in a row in the biggest gangbang and break the world record. And the question is she going to survive this, is one of the questions. And yes, so the story is told through different perspectives, but we never get Cassie's perspective herself. So we do get the perspective of some of the guys she is supposed to sleep with in this. So we get guy number 72, guy number 137 and guy number 600, and we get also a woman's perspective, but not Cassie's, but rather Sheila's. So guy 72 supposedly is Cassie's son. So the novel gives this away rather early. So Cassie at some point has given birth to a child early in her porn career, and she had to give up this child. She gave it up for adoption, and number 72 seems to be her child. So the question is he going to sleep with his own mother, I guess. But this is one of the guys. And then we get guy number 137, and he was a regular actor, but his career's sort of down in the dumps, and it seems to be this is like his last resort to get back to fame. And then there's guy number 600, and that is Branch Bacardi, a big porn star as well, who has done a lot of movies with Cassie White, and they have a past together, and he's not the nicest guy. And then you have Sheila, and Sheila is the coordinator of this whole event. So she decides who's going to be the next person to sleep with Cassie, and all the men are collected in this one room where they're waiting to be the next person to sleep with her. And then there's the next room that you as a reader don't get to see for quite some time in the novel, in which Cassie is sleeping with all these guys. So this was an interesting read. I guess it's a sort of funny story mostly. So Chuck Palahniuk takes a very humorous approach, and then obviously you also have some sinister notes as well. And if you're triggered by violence and by sexual violence, stay away from this. But mostly this takes it sort of, I guess, sarcastic and look at it. And if you know Palahniuk, it's kind of written in that style. I wouldn't say it's his strongest book though, from what I've read. This was alright. This was fun for the time I read it, but I don't think I'm gonna revisit it. I will say though, I think it's very appropriate that we actually don't get Cassie White's view, because the whole point is she's a porn star. She's been looked upon as an object by all these men all through her adult life, and it's just fitting that we don't get her perspective really. We look at her through all these men and through Sheila, who doesn't seem to like her very much. And so it's just kind of fitting that you don't look at her from her own perspective. You also constantly have sort of the question, because snuff is obviously the title, is this gonna be a snuff movie? Is she gonna die? Does somebody intend to kill her? Because through the novel you start getting the idea, or it's given away on the back cover that somebody plans to kill her. So the question is she gonna die? Is somebody gonna intentionally kill her? Is she gonna die because, well, she's going to sleep with 600 guys, and that's not necessarily normal or healthy for anybody? And so you kind of have this hovering in the background as well. I'm not gonna tell you how Palahniuk resolves the story. I think he does it rather well, I will say that. And he mixes some reality and fiction in this as well. So he refers to some real life porn stars. He got the idea for writing this book based on Annabelle Chong, and Annabelle Chong is also mentioned in the book, and I looked her up because I didn't know her before, because I'm no porn expert. And she did at a certain time, I can't remember when she was well known, she stopped, but she was a porn star, and she did at that time, world's biggest gangbang, and sort of set off a series of porn stars trying to break the record of the biggest gangbang, and that's basically what this happens in this story as well. So that's kind of where Palahniuk got his idea from. So you have sort of those things sprinkled in there, but you also have some stuff that is presented as facts. So for example, he talks about blow-up dolls, and then he says that the Nazis were actually the ones that invented the blow-up doll, or maybe not invented it, but made it more well used and gave it to their soldiers. And I had to look this up because I'd never heard of that, and at this point I had seen that some of the stuff he put in here were actual facts. So I was like, is this true? And people at some point actually did believe that, but that was a myth and it has been debunked and it's not true. So if you do read this, just take the stuff that he puts in here with a grain of salt, and do your research, I guess. One thing I thought that was really funny in this book is the porn titles he puts in here. So I didn't really like the porn title for the porn she's doing, where she's doing the record-breaking gangbang with these 600 men, because that is World Whore 3. So like World War, but World Whore. And she's apparently has done 2 movies before that. So World Whore 1 and World Whore 2, and this is supposed to be World Whore 3, the whore to end all whores. And I get the pun, but like with some things I'm like, do you really have to make jokes about them or puns about them? So I thought that was a bit uncomfortable and not necessarily, well, I mean, how appropriate are you gonna get in a book that's called Snuff, really, I guess. But there were also porn puns that I thought were kind of funny, because a lot of them are based on literary titles. So you have Catch Her in the Eye, The Arse Menagerie, and my personal favorite, Lady Windermere's Fanny. Make of that what you will. So you have those, and I thought those were actually kind of funny. I mean, they're a cheap laugh, but kudos to Polanek for coming up with so many, because there are quite a few in here. So that guy, I guess, spent some time on this, making up these porn jokes. I will say the plot is nothing very mysterious, so a lot of the plot points that happen you can see a long way off. The ending I thought was somewhat unexpected, but nothing shocking. It was good fun while I read it. I don't think I'm gonna go back on it. I will continue reading Chuck Palahniuk. I think he's good fun. But I will say this book is definitely not for everyone. This is a very particular book. So if what I said for some reason it makes you interested in this book, do go and check it out. I don't think it's for everyone. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So yeah, those were all the books I read in February. Sorry if this was a bit rambly. But yes, I think my favorite of the month of February was definitely Crazy Rich Asians, and I'm looking forward to see what I'll think of China Rich Girlfriend. Yeah, that is all I have for this video. Again, thank you so much to everybody who subscribed. Thank you so much to Jason for shouting me out. And I will see you in my next video. Oh, and if you're new today and want to subscribe after hearing me talk about these 3 very random books, please do so. And yeah, don't forget to leave your questions in the comment section. And I will see you next time. Bye, guys!